Welcome back, you're watching Real Talk. Today we are joined by cultural anthropologist Dr. Nestor Castro and writer and editor Paolo Chiquiamco.
Thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon. Doc, I have a question. Where did Philippine mythology and these folk tales originate?
It has always been there prior to the coming of the Spanish. So it's built in within Philippine culture. And when the Spanish came, they were able to document this. And of course, they brushed it aside as pagan practices, but actually it's part of Philippine culture and identity.
So these are the stories that your parents would tell you, and then you would tell your children, and so on and so forth.
Yes, it's largely oral, passed on from generation to generation from our ancestors. And you were right that it is basically taught to children. It's basically children's stories.
Pero Doc, I have a question. Kasi di ba we're an archipelago, so sobrang malalayo naman yung like from Luzon to Visayas. But then, how come pare-pareho yung ating notions of manananggal and the kapre?
There are several things that are shared across the archipelago because we're a trading society. There's long-distance trade between the islands. But actually, there's variation too. Like in the Cordillera, there's no concept of aswang.
Ah, really?
Yes, in the northern Luzon region. So it's shared among lowland Filipinos, but not in the Cordillera. So now they would say, oh, may aswang na dito because there's someone from Capiz who migrated.
Pero bakit, is it most of our Philippine mythology, are they mostly like morbid or scary?
Yes, a lot of scary stuff because mainly one function from an anthropologist's point of view, it's for socialization, teaching children the do's and don'ts. Like, you don't go out at night because it's dangerous. But of course, how do they explain it? Because the aswang might get you. Like, pregnant women are not supposed to be out at night. Of course, again, that's a dangerous situation for pregnant women. But to tell it through folk knowledge is because
So parang may practical basis behind all these.
There's a basis.
Many
episodes. But why or how did all of these creatures come about? Why the tikbalang? Why the manananggal? They must have found it somewhere enough to want to speak about it.
Well, it's part of Filipino imagination, how they interpret things around them, how they interpret the world. For example, early Filipinos believed in nature spirits.
Okay.
And for me, it's the native way of respecting the environment. Like the concept, for example, of tabi-tabi po.
Okay.
You don't just transgress a territory, you seek permission from the spirits before doing something. So it's a form of respect. Unfortunately, since people brushed it aside as that's superstition, so now they could just cut trees without respecting
without
them.
respecting. I like the word that you coined, which is stories of people's imagination. But for other people, some people really perceive these Philippine mythologies as truths. Like, for example, my mother told me a story that I don't know if it's real, but she said it was her neighbor, and she saw her neighbor die on a line of a Meralco line, and that neighbor was half and fried. So they said, siguro our neighbor was a manananggal, so half na lang, naiwan doon, nasunog, habang lumilipad, hindi nakita yung Meralco line, tas na kuryente, ganyan. So, I don't know, do you have documented cases?
Personally, I haven't seen one, but as an anthropologist, I've interviewed a lot of informants who attest that they've seen aswang, they've seen manananggal, etc.
Any
and who are we
story?
to say, no, that's not true.
Have they given like evidence or like a picture maybe or something?
No, but based on, there would be different versions, and probably during the Spanish period, there's no clear-cut description of what they look like. Like an aswang could be a black pig, it could be a dog.
So it could be a shapeshifter.
Yeah, because they change in appearance.
Yeah.
So there's no standardization of how it looks like, but it's fearful.
Sana kinain na lang nila lahat ng
Is this
Espanyol?
something that they picked up also from trade from other Asian countries, or is it
Yes.
predominantly just in the Philippines?
The manananggal is unique to the Philippines.
Really?
No
Okay,
other
so no
place in the
other-
world.
wow, okay. And then
but
any-
the others are shared. Like the kapre
Yes.
comes from the Arabic word kafir. It's the pagans. These are the
that's right.
non-believers of
Okay.
Islam.
Yes.
So it must have been developed during the time when Manila, the rest of Luzon was Muslim prior to the coming of the Spanish. So you're a non-believer, therefore you're a kafir, you're a kapre.
It's an interesting, we get to know the origins of all our manananggals and
Yes.
our kapre. But we have to cut our conversation short, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Everyone, welcome back to Real Talk. If you're just joining us, again, we have Dr. Nestor Castro and Paolo Chiquiamco.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about the origins of the mythological characters. Now let's talk about how they are depicted today. Have it changed?
Yeah, there's a lot of influence from Western, Hollywood films, for example. The traditional aswang or manananggal is now depicted like the vampires, influences of Twilight. So there has been these transformations at present.
So, speaking of writing, okay, is there a danger to appropriating these myths based on a writer's vision or a director's vision? Like, for example, I watched this movie that the aswangs, they started killing the people, but then instead of eating the people, they started mass-producing hot dogs made of the fleshes of people. So I watched that movie. So, it's not. Parang, is it destroying Philippine mythology? What would you think, Doc?
I've seen that film.
So absurd.
I think there are two views on this. The traditionalists would say, let's be pure about this. What is the real image of the aswang?
Yeah.
But others would say, no, this is a changing world, so this is artistic license. There are pros and cons, I think. What if our image of the aswang has changed? And so we have this image that they have long fangs, but and when we see a real aswang, it's not like that. So what will happen? I'm not sure.
It has to change with the times, I guess, because what we considered maybe, or our parents considered scary then, may not be so scary for the kids. We gotta add the fangs. We gotta add the Hollywood stuff to make it the hair. Even in Greek mythology, it was also started by oral.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It wasn't really writing it down. But why is it important? Like you find it important to write about it, to talk about it, and Professor finds it important to teach. So why is it important that we still talk about mythology and in today's society?
I have a different take. Since I teach about Philippine culture, I firmly believe that we could understand Philippine culture better if we know about folklore and mythology. Many of the things we do right now, we take it for granted, but has origins in Filipino mythology. For example, cuisine.
Okay.
We eat
Dinuguan.
a lot. Dinuguan, that's one. We eat a lot of food that contains bawang. Why? That's pangontra sa aswang.
Like that pampalasa?
It's also
On the side, yes, it's pampalasa. Some even say that the counterpoint to an aswang, you put it in half, is asin and bawang. That's it.
But you say, Doc, that it's important for the generation today to talk about these myths because it's a part of our culture, di ba?
Yes.
But why do you think it's not taught extensively in schools?
Well, I heard from Christine that it is being taught, but part of Filipino.
It's just part of Filipino, like reading. They have to read about the mythologies, but they don't really have a class, and they don't connect it to society today.
Yes. Unfortunately, we learn a lot about Western mythology.
Always.
You
Greek
even
mythology.
memorize who's Zeus married to. Yeah, so this is a critic of modern day education. So I believe it still has to be taught. But one advantage of Greek mythology and Roman mythology is the different characters. They have relationship with one another. But the aswang, how is it related to the tikbalang?
We don't have that.
Because it's not kept in terms of writing.
And there's no standardization. It's just like yun nga, you said in Cordillera there's no such thing as aswang, and not like for example in Norse mythology. Right now there's Thor, diba? Parang
Yeah.
sana may ganyan din tayo. What happened to Panday? Panday died when FPJ died. So like
Yeah.
Is Darna part of, or it's no?
Darna is part of the.
That's pop culture.
It's pop
already.
culture already. So
Technically, it's not part of Filipino mythology. However, yeah, that's pop culture, yes. But Darna fought the aswang as well.
Yes.
So there's this
Oo.
interface between the traditional and the modern one.
Like what you're saying, because it's like giving empowerment to women.
Women, Sure. yeah,
So, Doc, what do you hope to see, like a change in the future when it comes to Philippine mythology?
Well, since I come from the academe, so we're looking at it being institutionalized within the educational system, especially at the primary level, that
Yes.
it is taught in schools, of course, as mythology, not to scare kids, in order to understand our culture better, as part of Philippine literature, and of course, in later years, in order to understand our identity and our culture.
okay.
you
How
can-
interested are our Filipinos in terms of the anthropological studies? Are there a lot of kids in your class? I mean, do
Yeah,
they
there
do
are.
they find that like I can actually use this for my job and?
It's actually getting more popular now than it ever was before. And in of course, my Facebook account, I would receive questions, not just from my students, but people I don't know, telling me about their sightings of certain things.
Aswang sightings.
Yes, yes. There was one time that I didn't, I was too tired then, and then he reacted negatively, saying, "Oh, you don't even believe in this, so why would I bother ask you about this?"
Actually, baka siya po yung nag-send ng question na to. Our next question comes from Enzo.
Ayan.
He asked, over the years, especially in the province, so many people still believe in aswang. Why is that so?
Okay. First, I think the story of the aswang breeds in places where there are a lot of unexplained happenings or things.
Okay, example, Sikihor,
Yes.
Dueñas
Yeah,
and
but
Dumangas.
why
Is that
there
true?
only?
Saka yung mga copies, ano yun?
Basta
Yes.
yung
Bakit dun lang?
Negros Occidental and Oriental.
So some are hinterlands, so rural areas, so very far
Hard to
from
get to.
urban areas. So a lot of stories being told orally. But also some people say this is the center of the Philippines actually. There's a lot of power in that area.
that's what they say.
How do we come to terms with that, considering we're also a very Catholic country. And with all of these aswangs, how do we kind of
Well,
merge up?
surprisingly, our belief system is quite syncretic in nature, which means it's a mixture of different sources. So, for example, if you look at the jeepney driver, there's a Santo Niño, there's a Bagua, there's Buddha, whichever works.
Whatever works.
Yes.
Tabi-tabi po, just in case.
Yes.
But then, of course. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nestor and Paula. Thank you so much for being with us.